Awesome.
I have a brief microphone.
Microphone is important. So thanks everyone for being awake after lunch, even though I'm not the first post-lunch talk. It's always a challenge. So I mentioned earlier today that my talk kind of ties into what Jonathan was discussing in the keynote. This talk is addressed mostly at those of you who use Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, but also those of us who come from the language communities of languages which use right to left direction, like myself. So this is me. Well, this is not me. This is a caricature by a Syrian artist named Saad Hajo. And for those of you who don't speak Arabic, the figure on the top, the writing says the prisoner of tradition, and the writing on the bottom, it's the incarcerated, so another word for prisoner, of modernity. But I won't go into the symbolism behind the caricature. But Saad Hajo is someone interesting to check out if you can find any of his work online. I come from Palestine, or Israel, from a city called Haifa. I'm a software developer. I've done some research, some teaching. I'm a GPU optimization person for my day job. And my main contributions to LibreOffice are complaining about things, which, so that's a different term for filing bugs. And I'm also active in the UI aspects, and of course advocating the needs and interests of the language communities or script communities I'm from, so right to left issues and complex text layout. And I dabble in the politics of the TDF a bit, and we're not going to talk about that today. And so my own language is Hebrew, and I know some Arabic, which is the native language of the country I'm from. And I have some more open source work, and there are some links if you're interested. So then this is the first time I speak at LibreOffice Asia, so I took a few moments for the self-presentation. But I'll also take a few moments to, this is not a talk about Gaza, but I come from a country where a genocide of a part of the population is ongoing, and I have the privilege to be from the more powerful group, the group that controls the military resources and is engaging in that process of genocide, which is still ongoing, even if not at the same rate as before. This scene from the destruction in Gaza is something that over 2 million people have experienced, and all over that small strip of land, that's what a lot of it, or most of it, has been reduced to. And people are still dying and still malnourished because even international aid is not coming in. And if you want to learn about or ask about what you can do as Asians or individuals about that from where you are, then come see me after the talk. So that being said, on to the actual content of what I'll be discussing. So we'll have just a very brief reminder of the three language groups and what they're about, and then I will present several specific issues that we face with LibreOffice, or rather pairs of issues that have interest both from the perspective of both language communities or language groups, both right to left or complex text layout, and East Asian or Chinese, Japanese, Korean languages, and how those interests relate. And then maybe you can understand what I mean by this appeal for uniting. And so I won't be talking about the model of partitioning the languages into 3 groups. That's another talk. I won't be talking about, well, what Jonathan mentioned about switching from to being able to specify things for individual languages. That's an important change, and there are other changes that I won't be mentioning. And I won't be talking about the TDF, which is enjoying some drama these days. And I won't be talking about the source code at all. So we already saw this in the morning. Most of you have had the opportunity to enable full support either for one group of non-Western languages or another, and after you've gone through the tools options dialog and enabled one of these, or maybe even 2 of these, then what you can see in the UI we have today is that, for example, if you format character, you get the 3 groups, the Western, Asian, or complex, as they're called, then you can choose fonts for each of them. And there are other pieces of the UI that change when you enable full support. So as a reminder, by the way, the images here are completely fake and generated. This is not an actual place, and it's all stereotypical and non-representative. So what are Western languages? Actually not necessarily that Western, but some important European languages are in that group, most of them really. And but they're also, but even if you look at the bottom ones of the top 4, they're not really from Western Europe, so they're not that Western. Plus, there are lots of languages in the world which behave like them, but are in no way Western or European. So Quechua is a language, traditional language in Latin America, South America, or Amharic in Ethiopia. They're similar to the Western one, so they're in the same group. And this is the default. So when LibreOffice got started, over, well, a little less than 40 years ago, as in its original iteration by Star Division, then the interesting languages were, I guess, German and maybe English. And this is the default in our user interface and in the way most developers think about things. A second group is actually 2. So languages that are written from right to left rather than from left to right. That's RTL, so that's one acronym. And the other acronym is CTL, so complex text layout, which means that the form of the letter, the actual glyph that you use for each character, it will depend on the context, so the position of the letter in the word or in the sentence, and that's why it's complex. And some languages are just right to left, but not complex. Some languages are complex, but not right to left, etc. And if you want to know more about this language group, then I gave a state of right to left support talk last year, and here's the link to that. And of course, I don't have to tell this crowd about the Asian languages, but I have it here for completeness. So we have the use of symbols or glyphs for entire words rather than letters, but it's not always like that. And there is sharing of symbols or words or ideograms among languages, but there are also differences or subtle differences that Jonathan mentioned in his talk. And of course, not all the languages in Asia or even in East Asia are in this group. So it's essentially, we should call it some Asian languages. Both so people who use languages that aren't in the Western group, we've had I'm sure all of us have had this experience over the years, and we keep having it, that we see that some kind of feature in an application, and specifically LibreOffice, it works as long as you use English or German or some language from that group. But that feature, whether it's old or new, when you try to use it with your language, then it does something that would have made sense if everything was left to right, or in other senses like the European languages or the Western languages. And another annoyance is that sometimes changes get made, either a bug fix or a new feature, but the changes that get made still miss some specific use case that doesn't happen with Western languages and does happen with our languages. So new things can get broken, or new assumptions can be made about what the languages or the scripts are like. And there are hundreds of issues reported against LibreOffice of this kind. And just to give a statistic that is, it's a bit of a cooked statistic, but if we look at the bug tracking system for LibreOffice, our Bugzilla instance, there are meta bugs which depend on all of the specific bugs for some subjects. So there are meta bugs for pasting, for drawing objects, all sorts of meta bugs. One kind of meta bug that we have is for the different language groups. So we have a CJK meta bug that depends on 387 bugs or issues, and there are two meta bugs there's one for right to left, and also for right to left user interface related issues, and there are 634 of those. Not all of them are open. This is including the close bug. So we fixed, or developers have fixed a lot of these. And complex text layout also has quite a bunch. But I said that this talk is about uniting. So why should we unite if when we check, we'll find that very few of all of these issues are common to both CJK and one of these two groups. So I made a Bugzilla search who blocks both one of these and this one, and I came up with a very small number. So maybe this talk is misguided, or maybe we should just live our separate and parallel lives and have like sympathy for each other, but not work together as much. So obviously this is a rhetorical question, and the answer is going to be no. But let's make this more concrete with a few examples. So the first, and I'm going to have like a use case here. So I switch the font. Sutomo decides to try LibreOffice. So downloads a version from LibreOffice.org. Let's say it's the non-localized version, so the English version, installs it, and he wants to create a poster. And the poster will look something like this. I believe this is a poem, but I don't remember what it says exactly. In my Japanese, it's certainly, and it's mostly non-existent. So I know there's a place that says ku, and then the place that says no. Anyway, the interesting point here is that the direction in which the text is written is vertical. It's not horizontal, which is something that CJK languages need and use a lot. Tomo searches the user interface, whether he chose menus or chose the new tabbed UI, can't find anything. There's and even he notices there's a format page style that opens a dialog about the layout of the page. And still, there doesn't seem to be any option to use vertical writing mode. So that's kind of bad. Now, it's not that LibreOffice doesn't support this, but just a second. And before we talk about the specific bug, let's change the use case a bit. So now our user is called Samira, and she is trying LibreOffice for the first time, downloads a non-localized version. And she wants to do something a little different, still pretty common. She wants to write a letter, and in this letter she'll have both text in Arabic and text in English. So some paragraphs have to be right to left, and some paragraphs have to be left to right, and she needs to switch the directions. And she also does the same. She looks at the user interface, looks at the toolbars, looks at the sidebar, and doesn't see any control for switching the direction. It's just not there. So these are two use cases and two needs of the different communities. But the problem is actually the same problem, and it's a fact. And in fact, it's incredibly common, at least so far until a recent fix. So the users from our groups of languages very often don't have the full support enabled by default when they install LibreOffice and a profile is created for them. And the reason, so this has two reasons. Or the first reason for the problem is that, of course, people who use LibreOffice the first time, they don't know about these options and needing to enable anything. So it would take them a lot of exploration to figure that out. And obviously, this is not something we want them to start by doing. And LibreOffice fails, at least so far, to make a good initial choice regarding whether or not to enable this full support. There's supposed to be some heuristic based on the locale, never mind the details. But this is something that is actually shared. It wasn't filed. It was filed by mostly by myself. There's a meta bug and a few sub bugs, but in the we recently had a design meeting online to talk about how to resolve this problem or how to mitigate it. And there were several ideas, options. One option that we ended up, that we actually chose, at least for now, is to always enable the full support by default and see if the Western language users complain about the extra complexity. Another option would have been to use a stronger or better heuristic to determine whether the user needs the extra support or not. And there's a third option. And never mind exactly what we chose, and each of these options has its pros and cons. But we had that meeting, and we had people from the staff of the TDF. We had people who use Western languages. We had people who use right-to-left languages, namely myself. Jonathan was there, so he's in these two groups. But we had nobody who's a CJK user. Now, it's possible that we would, or maybe even likely that we would have made the same decision. But I don't know, that there could have been a different perspective or idea about the subject. Or it might have been reported earlier and maybe even fixed earlier if CJK users had complained about it before others did. So a second case. This is a bug that may have already been resolved or not. It's pretty simple. So if we look at the templates that we bundle with Impress, so here is an example of a template called Progress. The title slide looks like this with the gray and white area. And if you look at the font sizes, so to illustrate this, I typed up words in English, in Hebrew, and in Japanese, right? I think I got that right, hopefully. and you see that nothing matches. This is the smallest, this is the largest, this is in the middle. No two groups match in terms of the font size. And of course, matching fonts is a complicated thing. But so this was, and people noticed this a while ago, and there was a patch for this bug even last year. So now the progress templates behaves nicely, it seems. But still, the bug is not marked as fixed. So why isn't it fixed? I don't know. We have to check. But who is going to do the checking? There aren't any magical leprechauns, or I need the name of a mythical creature from an Eastern mythology, maybe a kirin. There aren't magical kirins who are gonna come and check that the thing is really fixed. So maybe one of us, right to left, or complex text layout people could have checked and done it. But it could also have been one of the CJK people. And since none of us has stepped up, then it's not clear whether the bug is fully resolved or not, and we need to check. Of course, this would not be the end of the story, because the choosing the size is not the only challenge. There is the bigger challenge of trying, when you're offering default templates. Of course, if you're using just one language, then who cares about the matching? You don't even care about the different sizes. But if you're using multiple languages, and we very often use multiple languages, because here I am using English and I speak Hebrew, and people speak one of the 5,000 languages of Indonesia, or Japanese, or Chinese, but we tend to use Western languages as well. So we definitely need multi-language group content, different fonts, and we want them to match not just by size. They should match well in the default templates, the glyph width, the stroke weight, other aspects. So this is this is something that requires expertise from multiple language group, or interaction of people who have typesetting expertise or know fonts well enough to make these choices. And that hasn't really happened yet. Third case. So let's look at the list of typefaces, font names that we get when, either in Writer or another application, we use the drop-down control on the toolbar. So when we click the button, we get multiple entries for different font families, typefaces, and each entry looks something like this. Has the typeface name, and it has some text that is rendered in that typeface. So this example is from a font that can be used for Arabic or Farsi. And what this says is alphabet Arabic, and which means an Arabic alphabet. But it's rendered in that font, or actually here it's not rendered in that font, I think, because I haven't installed it. I hadn't installed it on my laptop, but it would be if you had it installed. Anyway, so far so good. And here I'm going to describe two different bugs. So here's one problem for CJK users. This is LibreOffice localized to Chinese. I'm not sure if it's traditional Chinese or modern Chinese, but this is okay. So you see the menu on top, and here are some fonts, and some of these have Chinese names, and they don't have anything rendered here, which is already a problem. But forget about that for a second. Here's what happens when I take, on the same computer, we switch to an English locale and look at the list of fonts. So you see the UI styles this is from a while ago. But now those same entries, they don't have, the Chinese text is gone, it's just empty. So that's a problem. We want to know what the name of our font is. And now let's look at a different problem. So this is a screenshot from my computer. And when I open the list, I see all of the font names, and this is fine. They have English names. But on this side, I'm supposed to see something rendered in each font. So maybe if the font is in English, it's already rendered in English, then fine, who cares? So that you might not consider a bug. But when the font font name is in English, but it's say a Hebrew font or an Arabic font, you want something rendered here. So these are actually rendered correctly. This says Hebrew alphabet, this says Arabic alphabet, and this is great. But here there are just two letters that appear, and it's not clear why. So you could say, is it the same issue or two different issues? They've certainly been filed as two separate issues, and at very different points in time, so you can see the difference between the bug numbers. And this bug is about the font names not showing, while the other bug is about the rendered text, like I was saying. So two components, and each one is ignoring the other side of the box. So this one is the CJK bug is on the component on the left, and the right to left bug is about the component on the right. And the bugs don't know about each. So the people filing the bugs were not aware of the other bugs as they were filed. And in fact, the CJK bug is kind of abandoned. So there's like an automatic notice that asks the user if the bug is still manifests, which it does. And there's the question of what actually the question of what to do for each bug relates to the other bug, because we can render the name of the font in the font itself, or render it in the locale language, and that reflects on what we need to do for the other piece of the entry. So it's important that the bugs know about each other, or that the people handling them are aware of both sides of the issue. Plus, there's the extra problem. Okay, but let's not go into the details that much. And of course, who has the motivation to really sit down and decide what we're going to do in terms of the two pieces of each entry of that list of typefaces? So it's both of our language group communities, and that's another common interest. And the last example. In this example, we have another young person. He already uses LibreOffice, but he's struggling with the issue of positioning versus alignment. So he's opened the format paragraph dialog, and he sees the terms. He sees the two terms direction and alignment in that dialog. And he looks at there's a preview. It's not a preview of actual text, it's a preview of mock lines to try to understand what these two things mean. And this is what our example user, Merdad, which is a typical Farsi name, sees. So if he chooses left to right direction with left alignment, he sees this. If he chooses right to left direction with left alignment, he sees this. And so that didn't really help him understand the difference. And the same thing, if he did this with right alignment, again, these two previews would look exactly the same. Now, this is not a bug. It's just the preview does not consider direction. It's not part of what's implemented. But still, it doesn't help a newbie user understand these two concepts. And now here's another user, Ying, And she's gotten some old newspaper in China with vertical writing, like I was mentioning before, and she set the page style to support vertical writing because she enabled things, because she's gotten over the problem from the previous example. And then she opens format paragraph, and she wants to see how her paragraph will look like. But unfortunately, she'll only see these things, and she will not see, and these are horizontally laid out paragraphs, which is not what she's writing, because that too is just not implemented in the mock preview feature. So here are two features that could be added, and each one has some of its own motivation, but if someone would already be working on the mock preview, it might make sense to implement both of them rather than, or at least think about the two necessary features when working on every one of them. And so these have been my set of examples. They're not the only ones, and in fact, Jonathan mentioned other ones, although maybe not this explicitly in the morning. And these are all examples based on issues that have already been reported, that even myself, as a person who doesn't speak any or write any of these languages, can pretty easily relate to or understand. And I am willing to bet that there are lots more issues, both CJK specific only, and that have this relation or parallelism with issues that right to left and CTL users face that have not been filed. And the reason I'm sure about that is first because you remember the numbers I mentioned before. The number of bugs blocking CJK is not nearly as high as for right to left and CTL. And second, because I remember that the other day, Daehyun, I think his name was, the Korean fellow, in the other room in the lightning talk, he mentioned he had this problem with the fallback font. And I think that's a bug that's not even filed. So I'm sure there are a lot of other bugs like that. And this is another thing that motivates my appeal. So there is experience of CJK users that we, or the larger community of contributors is missing, both in identifying problems and in assessing potential solutions to these problems. Then our involvement, my own and other right to left and CTL users, is not enough. Even in the parts that we can relate to or we can talk about, we are not really pulling our weight. There's our channels, the right to left channel, Arabic, Farsi to a lesser extent, but mostly Arabic and Hebrew and other right to left languages. They either don't exist or are very inactive. So we are certainly not doing as much as we could, and we want your help. But I'm not asking that people who use CJK languages do our own work for us. But even if you just tended to the issues that are your own, that are relevant to your own language group, that already helps us quite a lot just by you being active. And after all, even though we're a very large group of humans using these written languages on Earth, we're still a small minority if you look at the main conference or TDF trustees, where not a number of people from our communities who are TDF members is still small relative to our overall numbers. Speakers, developers, we're underrepresented, both us and you. And I mentioned before the example of that design meeting that I attended, but no CJK user attended. So that's an example of us sometimes feeling that we need to speak for you, so right to left and CTL users, trying to think what would the CJK users want or need? What are they missing? And sometimes we can do that, but certainly it should be you that do that directly, and certainly not just us. And yeah, and so for this reason, I very much hope to see you all. Both people attending this conference and people that you talk to that are, active on the local level, and maybe it seems things are great. And then Shinji was talking about the activities you have in the Hackfest and this conference and everything. But I know that at the global general level, things are happening in English and not in your languages, nor in mine. But talking on Telegram, or IRC or Matrix, or on the LibreOffice Reddit, or finding bugs, or with existing bugs, checking out what's going on with them, and adding explanations or examples, screenshots, or petitioning, or asking for them to get work done, talking to Jonathan or other people. And also attending the meetings regarding user interface and design, when we do prioritization and we do a bit of brainstorming on these issues. So we would really like to see you all there. Well, not all, but see more of you there online. And that was my talk.
Okay, thank you very much. But time is ticking, so do you have a final question? Which is the person? No, okay. If you have some question, if you want some question, please ask him. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Clap your hands again.